Hello YouTube, RegionRatRider here. Now I know what you're thinking. What the hell am I doing on this? Well, it's been a long winter. This is my first ride of the year, so there's actually a lot that's changed in my life. And I'll start with the most important news, and that is that Amanda is no longer my girlfriend. She is now my fiance. Woohoo! So yeah, I'm hanging up the old bachelor status and getting married. I'm pretty excited about that. So she's moving here from Goshen. Hopefully she'll be moved in before the end of this month. I think we're moving the rest of her major furniture on the 18th of this month. So that's the most important thing. The second bit of news is that I hung up the Sony action cam and I bought a GoPro. My action cam started to get out of focus, and it was either replace it or switch to a different camera. And I decided that since Sony hadn't upgraded the action cam in quite some time, that I was just going to go with the GoPro since they came up with that hyper stabilization. And you know, I'm trying it out. This is actually my first moto vlog since I switched, so we'll see how this works. And third is that I traded in my 2018 CVO 115th anniversary for an Indian. Now, why did I do that? Well, it came down to a couple things. One, absolutely nothing against my CVO. I loved it. Great bike, looked good, performed really well. But my big issue that I ended up having, or they ended up running into, was the monthly payment. Not that I couldn't afford it. I didn't, you know, overstretch myself when I bought it. But, you know, most of my riding buddies aren't riding like they used to. Some of them have moved away. Some of them have temporarily stopped riding altogether. A couple of my friends ended up selling their bikes, you know, for various reasons, and they decided once, you know, whatever their personal lives get straightened out or their situation changes, you know, they'll look into getting a new bike. But they ended up selling them. So when it came right down to it, I just wasn't riding as much as I used to. Now I'll probably be riding more this season now because Amanda's moving in, so I won't have to contend with weather on Friday through Sunday. I'll just have, you know, if there's a nice day on the weekend, I'll go riding. But regardless, I was paying just a boatload of money for my bike to just be sitting in the garage. So Indian was having a lot of sales lately, and they basically made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I was hesitant to, you know, downgrade it to a regular Harley because I had already had a CVO. So I didn't really want to put a ton of money, or put a ton of money into a ultra limited to give me some of the things that were on the CVO that I wanted. Whereas with Indian, I got almost all those features. So at the end of the day, I was able to shave my payments almost in half and get all of the features that were on my CVO that I came to appreciate on the same bike. So I decided that I was just going to pull the trigger and switch to the Indian. That's not to say I'm, you know, never going to ride a Harley again. I could keep this bike a couple of years and then trade it in for a new Ultra Limited or a Street Glide or whatever. But at this particular junction, what I wasn't willing to do was A, keep my payment the way it was, and B, sacrifice some of the things that I really started to like about my CVO. So that's where the big, you know, difference between Indian and Harley comes into play. You know, Harleys, they're great bikes, but you know, competition breeds innovation, and there's just a lot of things that come standard once you step into a Roadmaster, which is what this is, that are aftermarket or upgrades that you have to put on an Ultra Limited to make it at the same level. You know, all the controls on this bike are chromed out already. It has a motor that's a little bit more powerful than the 107. I don't think it's necessarily more powerful than my CVO. I'd probably say not, but it's comparable. But heated grips, heated seats. I'm a big fan of this power windshield that they got going on this bike. It's got a really good stereo system on it. Not that I really listen to stereo systems that much anymore, but you know, it has the ride command, which is, you know, just maybe still a little bit better than the Boombox GTS, but they're on par with each other. So it basically came down to, you know, the creature comforts that I got used to on my CVO that I could get on an Indian with no extra cost. So that was the big factor, and why I decided to pull the trigger now was that the Indian dealership by my house that I went to, you know, was having a sale. They had a couple 2018s lying around. This is a 2018, not a 2019, so I did miss out on the ride mode upgrade, and they redesigned the lowers a little bit on the 2019s. But I got a fantastic deal by buying the 2018 instead of the 2019. So that's basically what happened. You know, I in the let me stop here. In the spirit of full disclosure, you know, I ended up paying about 25 grand for this bike, which was $17,000 less a year, or less MSRP than what I paid for my CVO. So, you know, that's essentially what happened, why I pulled the trigger on it. Like I said, I'm not going to never buy a Harley again. You know, I am enjoying this bike a lot. I don't have that many miles on it yet, but it's been a lot of fun to ride so far. So what I was going to do, you know, in the few minutes I have left on this first video, is talk about some of the differences between this Indian and a Harley. First, I'll talk about comparing this to my CVO, which feature-wise is actually a more fair comparison, because a lot of the features on this bike are available on the CVO, of course, but they're not on the Ultra Limited, so I'll discuss that too. So first of all, I'll talk about the rider position. So on this bike, the rider triangle is a bit flatter than on the equivalent Harley, which would be the Ultra Limited SAS CVO. So you're a little stretched out a little more, which I don't know if I like more or less. It's just different. So that was a little bit something that I had to get used to. As far as performance, like I said, this bike is probably, it's on par with the 114s, the new touring engine on the Ultra Limited. I don't know which one is faster. I would say maybe the Harley is a slight bit faster, but if the Indian turned out to be slightly faster, I wouldn't at all be surprised. This bike's not quite as peppy as my CVO, but my CVO has the 117 engine in it. Options or creature comforts. Both my bike and this bike had heated grips and seats and power locks, none of which come on the Ultra Limited, except the Ultra Limited does have heated grips. But the power locks, the remote start, the extra security, the heated seats, those are all, you can certainly pay to upgrade your Ultra Limited to have those, but they're standard on the CVO and they're standard on this bike. This bike also has a power windshield. The stereo system on this bike sounds just as good as my CVO did. It sounds a lot better than what the Ultra Limited sounds like. You'd have to upgrade the Ultra Limited to get that quality of stereo. So those are the basic, differences as far as options. Riding and handling, I will say that the Indian, and I knew this well beforehand, it feels a lot more nimble than the Harleys do. The Harley touring frame, I think, came out in 2007. And when it came out, it was a huge improvement over the 2006. But still, it's 12 years old. And this Indian just handles a boatload better than my Harley did. I can feel it the low speed turns, I can feel it the high speed turns. It sits lower. My seat height is, I believe, 2 inches lower than my CVO was, and yet the riding or the shocks are more plush. So it has better shocks, and it's also lower. So I feel when I come to a stop on this bike, I have a lot more control over holding the bike up, because I have an extra couple inches in seat height. Or I'm missing a couple inches in seat height, I should say. So as far as, everything else, I mean, I like the way this bike looks. It's all, it also has all LED lighting, which, again, my CVO had all LED lighting, but an Ultra Limited does not. You'd have to pay extra money to have that happen. So I would say that the Indian is a better buy if you're looking at, feature sets between this bike and a Harley. Now, I don't think, and I will never say, well, that means the Indian's better than Harley, because I don't believe that. They're just different. I would say that they're just as good. There's pluses and minuses to both. Like I've always said. Personally, right now, I mean, since this is my bike and it's new, I'm really loving it. But in a year or so, I may look at this bike, and some of the things that this bike comes up short on may become bigger issues for me. So some of the things that it comes up short on is the engine heat. One of the things Harley did with the Milwaukee 8 is they really did a bang-up job figuring out how to make the engine run cooler as far as exposing heat to the rider. And especially my CVO, I never felt the engine heat at all. On this bike, it feels like my Street Glide did. After riding it for a while, I can definitely feel the heat on my right leg. It's not a deal breaker for me by any stretch, because I'm used to that on earlier Harleys, but I still notice it. So that could be an annoyance later on that, it just doesn't bother me right now. One of the other things that I've noticed about this bike is that there's less adjustability on certain things. Like, for instance, the mirrors. The way I sit on this bike, I have a blind spot on my right side. I cannot adjust this mirror any more than it has been to move it out so I don't have that blind spot. So I'm stuck with it. I'm always going to have to, you know, look to the side to see if I have a blind spot there. So that's a little bit annoying. Some of the fit and finish is not quite as good as Harley. For instance, let me put my bike in neutral real quick. These displays right here, they're kind of cheesy looking, and this storage area, the plastic's really cheap, and some of the accent material is cheaper than it is on a Harley. So there is that. But you know, the difference is that, you know, on the plus side, it just has a lot more standard features. So it's a give and take. I would not say that, you know, I wouldn't say the Indian's better or worse than a Harley. It's just different. I know that Indian loyalists will say that I'm crazy and how dare I insult my brand new motorcycle, but it's just the truth. There are differences and there are trade-offs, and if you're looking to buy an Indian or a Harley, you know, you really need to weigh those as to what should determine what bike you're going to get. The one thing I do like about this bike is that Harley spent a lot of time making the 107's engine more quiet, and I don't like that. I like the fact that I can hear the engine a lot more on this bike. It sounds a lot more like a hot rod, which I do miss. I did miss when I bought my CVO. I mean, it was loud if you were standing behind it because I had upgraded pipes and I had the baffles taken out. But I like hearing the engine. I like the rumble of the engine, and I get that with this bike, and I'm appreciative of it. So that's about it for my first video, YouTube. I'm gonna shoot I might shoot another video today. I'm definitely gonna shoot a couple follow-up videos about, you know, how I feel about this bike versus my Harley over, you know, over the summer, you know, my first maintenance costs and things like that. It's much easier to maintain Indians than it is Harleys. You don't have those big maintenance bills, you know, every 5,000 miles like you do on a Harley. It's a lot easier to change the oil. I may change the oil myself, I don't know. But anyway, that's it for my first video of the summer. Super glad to be back out on my bike, or a bike, especially my new bike. And I will chat at you all later. This is RegionRatRider signing out.